Hi everybody! This week I'm going to show you how to loom knit an Elsa doll from the movie Frozen. You can also use this pattern to make a regular doll. Use your imagination to pick your favorite colors to make your doll your own. Before we get started, I would like to give a very special shout out to Chantel and Heather for suggesting that I make this doll. I had a blast coming up with this pattern, and it's going to make the perfect Christmas gift for my granddaughters. Thank you so much for the idea. I love it. I tried to make this video and pattern as easy and fun as I could. That way beginners and kids could make one too. I can't wait to show you how to make this awesome doll. So let's get started. I will leave a list of the things that you will need down below.
So the first thing we need to do is to make our head and body. Okay, this is exciting. Here comes the instructions. The head and shoulders will get 15 rows, and we will be using the 12 peg loom. We will use 2 yarn strings. Give yourself extra on the end before making the slip knot. Put the slip knot on the side peg like this. Separate the end yarn strands from the working yarn. Pull the working yarn behind the first peg. Now E-wrap the pegs all the way around the loom like this until all the pegs have one loop on them. Then wrap them again so that you have 2 loops on all the pegs. Now pull all the bottom loops up and over the top loops and the pegs with your loom hook. This is our cast-on row. The rest of Elsa's head and body will be done with the purl stitch. Watch carefully as I show you how to do this. Most of Elsa is made with this stitch. Lay your working yarn under the top loop on the next peg. Put your loom hook under the loop and pull the working yarn through the top loop to form a new loop. Pull the old loop off of the peg and put the new loop on the peg. Let's watch that a couple more times. I like this stitch because it makes a nice tight knit, and you want a tight knit for when you make Elsa's face. Continue doing this until you have 15 rows. When you have all of your rows done, we will cut the yarn, but leave enough to make a knot. This is where we will attach the blue yarn for the body of Elsa. Tie the 2 colors together. The blue part of the body gets 10 rows. Once the 10 rows are done, wrap the blue yarn around the loom twice and cut it. That will give you enough yarn to work with. Now pull your yarn strands through each of the loops all the way around your loom so that you can take your work off of the loom. Thread the yarn needle with the end yarn at the head. Weave the yarn through each of the stitches around the top of Elsa's head. Then pull it tight. Secure it with a knot and cut the ends off. Now flip the doll so that the smooth side faces out. I use polyfill stuffing to stuff the head and a craft popsicle stick to hold the head so that it won't wobble once you put the hair on her. Use a scrap piece of yarn to tie around her neck. Tie it tightly and cut the extra strings off. Use more stuffing and stuff the body evenly all the way around the stick. Pull the blue yarn once it is stuffed to close the hole. Knot and cut the extra pieces. Now the body and head are done. The arms are made the same way as we made the body, but we will be using our 5 peg loom with 5 blue rows and 5 skin colored rows. I marked the first peg on my loom with a marker so I can keep track of my starting point. Do your cast on row the same way as the body, starting with the blue yarn. Do your 5 rows, counting the cast on row. Then switch colors and do 5 more rows with the skin colored yarn. Finish each arm like you did the body by turning them to the smooth side and stuffing them. The legs are made the same way as the body and arms. Use the 5 peg loom for the legs also. This time we will start off with the skin colored yarn and give it 11 rows. And for Elsa's shoes, we will make 3 blue rows. Be sure to stuff the legs and leave enough extra yarn on the skin colored yarn end so you can sew the legs onto the body. Now that the arms and legs are done, let's sew them onto the body. Determine where you want the front part of your doll and sew the legs onto the doll toward the front part of the bottom part of the body. I thought this would give Elsa a small butt and make her easier to sit in a seated position if you want her to sit. Once you get the front side of the leg sewed on, turn her over and sew the back part of the leg to the body too. This will ensure that her leg is sewed on well and won't come off. Attach both legs and be sure to knot the ends of your sewing yarn. Attach the arms just above the blue section of Elsa's bodysuit. We will be putting the dress under Elsa's arms. Sew the arms on at the blue end. The blue will be the sleeves. Sew the front side and back side to each of the arms also. This is what Elsa's body looks like when she is done. Let's make Elsa's eyes. Be sure to use your imagination to make the eyes the way you want them. My way is only a suggestion. Use Google if you need to see what Elsa's eyes look like, or if you want different eye ideas. If you would like to make suggestions for some of my future projects, check out Crisp Nation to interact with me as I show you the projects I am making as I make them. Now simply draw and cut out a pattern on a piece of paper. Double up on your felt and cut around your eye pattern to make 2 eyes. I use Puffy paint to paint the colors onto my eyes, but you can use acrylics, nail polish, or glue smaller pieces of colored felt for the inside of her eye colors. I used white first, then light blue, then black, and a dot of white for a sparkle. And then I let them dry. While the eyes are drying, we can make the dress. We will be using the 12 peg loom. It has 23 rows of the blue colored yarn to match the body. Make your cast on row with the E-wrap and weave the end yarn piece into your work like this. After the cast on row is done, do the purl stitch for the other 22 rows. When it is done, wrap the yarn around the loom twice and cut it. End the dress by pulling the end yarn strands through each of the loops on the pegs and take the dress off. Now it is time to attach the dress to the doll. You can turn the dress to the flat side like this one or leave the bumpy side out. It is your choice. Put the dress on the doll with the end yarn strand up at the top. Arrange the dress where you want it and then pull the string to tighten the dress at the top. Thread the end yarn string onto the needle and sew the dress to the doll around the top to hold the dress on. Now we can make the cloak for Elsa. We will use the 12 peg loom for this too. I used a slightly different blue color for the cloak and we will make it 26 rows. Because I wanted the cloak to be thin, I only used 1 yarn strand. Place your knot on the first peg and weave the end yarn strand into the cloak like you did for the bottom of the dress. E-wrap from the first peg to the last peg, and then we will turn around and go back to the first peg by making a figure 8 on the last peg like this. Then E-wrap the second loop on all the pegs back to the first peg again. Once they have 2 loops on all the pegs, pull the bottom loops over the pegs and the top loop. Push your work down. Wrap the first peg again like this and continue wrapping and make your rows until you have 26 rows. Once you have all your rows done, it is time to cast off. Wrap the peg next to the last peg. Pull the bottom loop over the top. Take that loop off of the peg and put it on the peg before it so that it has 2 loops on it. Pull the bottom loop over the top loop. Then move that loop over to the next peg again. Continue to do this all the way across until you get to the last loop. Take the last loop off of the loom. Cut your yarn, leaving a little extra. Put the end yarn through the loop to make a knot. I put snowflakes on my cloak with Puffy paint, but you don't have to do that. I actually made one doll with snowflakes and the other without. Let's make Elsa's hair. I used a notebook that is 10.5 inches long to measure the hair strands. I used a pale yellow to make her hair blonde. Simply wrap the yarn around and around the notebook like this. Once you have enough strands to start with, use scissors to cut one end of all the strands. We will attach the hair one strand at a time by folding a piece of the cut yarn in half. Determine where you want your hairline to be. Pull up a loop on the doll's head where you want hair and put the hair loop through the loop on the doll and push the ends of the hair piece through the hair loop and pull it tight. Do this all over the doll's head where you want hair, leaving the face area without hair. Once the cloak is dry, cut a small piece of yarn and knot it to the opposite side of where the other yarn piece is. Turn the cloak over, lay the doll on top of it, and use the 2 yarn strings to tie the cloak around Elsa's neck. Now turn the doll over again and braid her hair, and use a piece of scrap yarn to hold the braid with a bow. The last thing that we will do is make Elsa's face. These are the things that I use to make the face. You can use fabric glue or tacky glue to glue everything on. I used tacky glue for this doll. For Elsa's nose, I used a scrap piece of skin-colored yarn and tied a couple of knots. Cut the end pieces off and then glue the nose into place. Isn't it cute? I love her nose. I used puffy paint to give her eyelashes. I also gave her blonde eyebrows, but I kind of like it better without eyebrows. You can use this pattern to make an Anna doll too. Just change the colors of her dress and hair. I love how the dolls turned out, and I hope you like it too.
If you like this loom craft idea, you also might want to see how to make an Olaf doll too.
I will leave a link below to make it easy for you to get to.
I hope that I made this video easy to follow along with, and that it encourages you to make one too. If you do decide to make one, I would love to see it, so stop by our Facebook page and post a picture. Here is what was shared with us this week. I always appreciate you taking the time to post your pictures and share your suggestions. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of EasyMeWorld and for making this such a fun place to be creative. I love you all, and I'll see you next week with another craft. Bye! You have no idea how much fun this is.
Run across the wooden bridge.
I'm here!
Really awesome bridge. Just look at it.
Yeah.